Traitor Obama must be punished. What the Democrats did, the Trump family, none of us should let it be missed or forgiven. Trump's son Eric wrote a book, Under Siege, about what his family went through. Well, since the moment his father announced in 2015 that he was going to run for president of the United States.
Eric, he went through a lot. That's true, through a whole lot. And he survived to tell the tale, just like his father. I spoke with him a few minutes ago.
I was watching Fake Box, Fake News, acting. He is armed and wants to send them to prison. He wants all of this. I've been accused about 5 times. I took a photo for the file. Who would have thought it would work out in my favor because it was a good photo?
Donald has a good sense of humor. I think that's what helped him and his family get through the nightmare that the Democrats put them through. It was. It was a well-organized harassment campaign aimed at breaking him.
It's unpleasant for me to say this, but President Barack Obama, now there is irrefutable evidence that he was the instigator of a seditious conspiracy aimed at undermining the will of the American people and overthrowing the government of the United States in 2016. We absolutely must hold each of these criminals accountable for the crimes they have committed. These are the most terrible crimes in the history of America. James Comey, John Brennan, Clapper, Rice, and Biden were at the meeting on July 28 in the Oval Office. They told Barack Obama about Hillary Clinton's plan to connect Trump to the false claim of Russia collusion. It consumed our national discourse for 5 years. It undermined a legitimately elected sitting president. It sabotaged the administration. It set up a 3-star general. It tore apart and divided this country. We had a constitutional crisis, the scale of which I think no American can fully comprehend. It's terrible. And each of them must be held accountable. For now...
Before I forget, at the end I'll show you Nancy Pelosi swearing, saying that her husband, according to her, is screwing a guy with a hammer.
You should not believe. You'd better believe, but you know that he has returned. He has returned and won, and it's incredible. Well, a new book has come out, written by his son, Eric Trump, called Under Siege, My Family's Fight to Save the Nation. It just reached #1 on the charts. Oh my God, and I'm happy to invite Eric to the conversation right now. Eric, congratulations, wow. Not just about the book and reaching #1, that's a given, but, congratulations to you and your family. Thank you. The book.
Erica is... Everyone is interested, yes. It instantly became a bestseller and is the first release from the Trump family. I think it will interest us all. There are, of course, details there that we don't even suspect.
Listen, being #1, a best-selling author, that wasn't in Trish's plans, I can tell you that. Winning the first election against Hillary Clinton likely wasn't planned, especially since we didn't even know about delegates or caucuses. Back in 2024, we sat on wooden benches in freezing courtrooms while they tried to imprison us. Imprison for something we didn't do wrong. It likely wasn't planned for us to return and achieve one of the biggest victories in modern political history. And that's what the siege was about. They tried to destroy us. They tried to destroy this country. They tried to destroy, you, Trisha. They tried to destroy all your viewers. They went against all of us. They went against America. They went against the Constitution. They attacked religion. They attacked the family. They went against all of us. I mean, a lot of people watching right now have probably experienced being passed over because of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all sorts of other nonsense, right? They attacked all of us and went through our families to do it. They charged us. They charged my father 91 times. I became the most subpoenaed person in American history without any wrongdoing. They spied on his company. They leaked my tax returns, my father's, and all our employees' returns to the New York Times. They also fabricated the Russia hoax and the dirty dossier. Every attorney general, every district attorney in the country, whether it's Letitia James or of course, Jack Smith as special counsel and Alvin Bragg and Fani Willis, and I could go on and on. They attacked us like dogs. They took away our voice, silenced us on social media, and put a ban on our speech. 91 charges. He was removed from the ballot in Maine and Colorado. I mean, I could go on and on. I could go on and on for hours.
I still have post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, all of this was just so incredibly traumatic. And well, and yet, look, It's a testament not just to you and your family and your father, but also to America, right? Because America came back really, really strong, elected your father. Now, all of this is coming out and being revealed. I have a question for you. When all of this was happening, did you, Eric, ever think, oh God, Dad, what have you gotten us into? Did you ever think we should step back because this could harm future generations?
I'm sure this question came up at family gatherings. Maybe we should just give up? I don't know how they endured. I really don't know how they endured. It was a war of one family against, well, the deep state, which had every weapon to suppress individual resistance. Or maybe they endured precisely because they are a family.
Oh, I definitely do. A few times I wondered what we'd gotten into, but it was mainly us versus you, right? That. No, I said it. I left court with him and stayed by his side, discussing it often in Vassal. I was by his side every day. And when he turned around, I was the first one he shook hands with. 34 criminal charges, all of them were dismissed. They wanted to jail him, so we got into the car and armored vehicles. We were driving on Franklin Delano Roosevelt Drive in New York. I asked him, you know? He replied, man, I don't. How? He was extremely confident we'd win the case and everything else. I said, we'll either win the White House or end up in jail, even though we did nothing wrong. That's how wide the swing of the pendulum was. That's exactly what I mean. It was either 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, or they would have jailed us, destroyed our family, and ruined our company. That's what they try to do daily. Listen, he defeated the mainstream media, he defeated the corrupt Department of Justice, he defeated the corrupt FBI, he defeated the establishment, which spied on his company, which used every corner of the government to try to overthrow him. That's what you would expect to see in a third world country. But when I got a call and was told, I heard there are secret servers in the basement of Trump Tower communicating with the Kremlin, I started laughing. First, we don't have servers in Trump Tower's basement. We're mainly a cloud computing company without any servers, and we don't know anyone. We were just trying to understand what an Iowa caucus is, let alone how to talk to the Kremlin. Give me a break. We knew very little about politics. Honestly, it was the most incredible journey. But the book is actually really inspiring. It's not just a siege, it's about overcoming the greatest darkness. This is a David and Goliath story with the government as Goliath and us as David. You can overcome, stand firm, and we can win.
Amen to that. Indeed, very clever David Besproshi and Goliath with all his troops, armor, weapons, mass media, and armed law. And all of this needs to be cleaned out. Yes, so that even to the third generation, their children would remember and know not to do it again. What were they afraid of besides their own skin, yeah. They were afraid that Trump would take away their future, that he would show how useless and unnecessary they all were, that he would do what they couldn't manage to do. Maybe they didn't even try to do it at all, but at least they looked like they were trying, but they just couldn't manage it.
I saw my father 2 or 3 days ago in the Middle East. Peace there. You see how taxes are going down in this country. You see a big, beautiful bill. You see inflation going down, to a normal level. You see the lowest gas prices in recent years. You see people proudly standing for the national anthem. You see churches filling up on weekends. You see America being respected again on the world stage. And every aspect of this struggle, which was so fierce, so vicious and vindictive, and the worst you could imagine from any government. And
what were they doing? Instead of lowering prices, improving the business climate for America, and in general, sleepless nights for the good of the American people.
So today we're focusing on the staggering sum of over $1 billion taxpayer dollars that's being directed to politically connected non-governmental organizations, or NGOs. Was this not disclosed, or did government oversight bodies fail to disclose it? But by concerned Illinois residents and Republican lawmakers from our grassroots initiative, which we call Department of Government Efficiency, or the Department of Government Efficiency. Before we show you where the money is going, we need to ask one simple question. Why is the government funding NGOs at all? First of all, there's no transparency. NGOs are not subject to the Freedom of Information Act or Freedom of Information Act. Taxpayers can't see how their money is being spent. Just last week, a lawsuit was filed because the state refused to disclose a contract that specified how much public money was being sent to certain groups. Secondly, the language of the budget is vague, and that's done intentionally. These grants are hidden under general terms with minimal or no details. Legislators are asked to approve funding without knowing how the money will be used or even who will receive it. Third, the social services budget has been taken over. It used to mean help for the elderly, support for single mothers, and people with disabilities. Now it's filled with programs for politically oriented groups, offering vague services like parenting mentorship, support for immigrants, and protection of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer rights. And many of them are initiatives based on race or identity, which serve political goals rather than real needs. Fourth, these expenses undermine real charity. Faith-based groups and private charities are pushed aside, while politically connected NGOs receive taxpayer money. The government picks winners and losers and rewards those who keep the ruling party in power.
But when you see where the money goes, it's just political diversion. They support illegal immigrant groups, psychological operations mentoring parents, left-wing anti-racist training, political advocacy, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer causes, and political organizing disguised as outreach. In other words, it's probably funding all the activist efforts, the damn street army we see out there.
In the state of Illinois, the governor, with the help of local politicians, sent out $1 billion. 2 organizations engaged in party activities, Democratic causes, and funds the paramilitary units of the Democratic Party. There were the Red Guards, the Hitler Youth, the Khmer Rouge, all trained to beat, kill, and burn if necessary. And that's $1 billion from one state alone. And how much did they transfer, robbing us from the federal government budget? Trillions. That's what the money stolen from taxpayers was spent on. Taxpayers. That's where the stolen taxpayers' money went. The kindest and nicest Governor Pritzker went to Las Vegas with his friends, sat down at a card table, and started getting lucky. And he took $1.4 million out of Vegas. That's how lucky he kept getting.
Obviously, and I explained this, or
At least we did.
In the statement, I went on vacation with my wife and friends. I'm incredibly lucky. You need to be lucky to win, honestly, when you go to a casino anywhere. It was in Las Vegas, and I like playing cards. And, I founded a charity poker tournament here in Chicago, which is called the Chicago Poker Challenge. It has raised millions of dollars for the Holocaust Museum here, EM. Advocating for civil rights is a major part of the Holocaust Museum's mission.
I also think he's very lucky. He inherited a share in 900 hotels around the world in 45 countries. And then there's a little more, like some cruise companies and other small stuff. His fortune, it's estimated, he's not the biggest co-owner, so to speak, but his personal fortune is estimated at $4 billion. Naturally, not rupees. So 1.4 million, well, that's just kind of a small souvenir. Friends for handing them the stolen billion. Well, let me give you some little trinket as a gift, like, let's get you a pencil with a funny cap. They gifted 1.4 million. What else did they do? They handed out indulgences to each other. Papers called presidential pardons. Obama pardoned 1,927 people for any crimes. I think almost all of them were his fellow party members. Although, honestly, I didn't check, but with Biden, I did check. So Biden, whether he issued them or not, by the way, we don't know. 4,245 means full pardons. There were also all sorts of other silly things like reductions, commutations, I don't know. But what interests us are these 4,245 full pardons from any crimes, those we know about, those we don't know about, the ones they committed, the ones they might have committed during the period for which the pardon was granted, and we don't know anything about this at all. Even if they killed someone, it doesn't matter. So, well, actually, these indulgences were given to those who committed crimes against the people of the United States.
The pardons that Sleepy Joe Biden gave to the Select Committee of Political Thugs and many others are declared invalid, annulled, and void because they were signed with an auto pen. In other words, Joe Biden didn't sign them, but more importantly, he didn't know anything about them.
In fact, Trump cannot revoke these pardons. Right now, well, the Justice Department is gathering evidence that Biden didn't know anything and didn't order his signature to be put on thousands of modern indulgences, but I'm afraid they won't succeed. Because Grandpa can say that he doesn't remember now, but back then he did, and now he doesn't remember. Let's take a look at what Obama wanted and what he did with America.
Shortly before Barack Obama was elected the 44th President of the United States, he told an enthusiastic crowd of supporters that he wanted to fundamentally transform America. Over the next 8 years, America learned what he meant. 3 issues embodied the transformation that Barack Obama had in mind: race relations, healthcare, and foreign policy. Let's look at each one in turn. Race relations. Is it possible that when Barack Obama said he wanted to fundamentally transform America, he meant a post-racial society where skin color doesn't matter? Indeed, as a mixed-race person, half white, half black, Barack Obama seemed like the perfect figure to make this a reality. But it was not meant to be. Barack Obama's actions instead fueled racial divisions in America. In July 2009, when a white police officer briefly arrested a black Harvard professor as a suspected burglar, Barack Obama accused the officer, a man with no history of bias, of racism. In July 2013, after a Hispanic volunteer security guard was acquitted of killing a young black man in Florida, Barack Obama attributed the verdict to racism. And then in August 2014, when a black teenager who had just robbed a store was shot by a white police officer in Ferguson, Barack Obama again attributed Missouri's verdict to racism.
First of all, this is a country where racism was almost non-existent. Don't get me wrong, there will always be people who, for some reason, fear and hate those who are different from them. Some hate Jews, some Italians, some black people, others Japanese, Chinese, and so on. But the country as a society no longer suffered from this. A black man was elected president, though he's half black and half white, making him a symbol of that. And he started to fan the flames of racism.
While in the decades preceding Obama's presidency, racial tensions had sharply decreased. Now they were ignited by the man whom so many Americans had hoped would extinguish them.
White people voted for this man who had actually done nothing yet, who didn't know how to do anything yet, hoping that the fact of his election and he himself would heal America from the consequences of racism. It turned out the opposite. But that wasn't the end of it.
Healthcare. Where Bill Clinton failed, Barack Obama will succeed. He will bring the United States closer to the enlightened countries of Europe, all of which have socialized their healthcare systems. Obama used his oratory skills to achieve this goal. If he had to resort to outright lies to get what he wanted, that was fine. If you like your doctor, you can keep them. That was one of his goals, his constant phrases, but it wasn't true. His claim that the program would save Americans thousands of dollars on medical expenses was also untrue. Despite all his efforts, Obama failed to sell his plan to the majority of Americans. It turned out that most of them liked the health insurance they already had. On Christmas Eve 2009, Democrats passed the 2,500-page Affordable Care Act in the Senate overnight. When she was asked what was in the legislation, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi famously replied, "We have to pass the bill so you can find out what's in it. A few years later, the 2,500 pages became 11,000 pages of new regulations. Healthcare costs skyrocketed, and many people had to give up the doctor they trusted. But for Obama, it was worth it.
Healthcare got worse, more expensive, and a lot more corrupt. Much more corrupt. Billions started to be embezzled. But Obama, just like Pritzker, got a little gift when he left the White House. $100 million. Not a lot, you might say, but we don't know how much more he got. Well, they managed to quietly stash away $100 million. The book in the book by Michel, that is, not for an advance like write us a book, and here, there's the advance. Count the number of documentaries he was supposed to make, either for home box office or for someone else. By the way, I'm showing you clips from Prager University videos. The wonderful commentator Dennis Prager is a very smart man and the organizer of this unique university. I highly, highly, highly recommend Prager. You find it on the internet. It's a treasure trove of knowledge.
Foreign policy. Since the Iranian Revolution of 1979, American presidents have considered Iran a dangerous enemy. Obama believed he could change this hostile relationship. The central element of Obama's new policy was supposed to be the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, widely known as the Iran nuclear deal. A key feature of the plan was to limit Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons for 15 years. In exchange, Obama was supposed to lift sanctions and release $150 billion of Iranian assets frozen in American banks.
That is, wait, 15 years continue all your developments in secret, and then no one will stop you from making atomic bombs and long-range missiles. You'll be able to destroy Israel, which I, Obama, have long wanted very much.
The deal deeply alarmed many Americans, including some Democrats, and especially Israel and its supporters. First of all, the short-term influx of billions of dollars, which will almost certainly be used to fund Israel's enemies Hamas and Hezbollah, posed an immediate danger. How?
As we know, the money transferred by Obama to Israel was used by Hamas to prepare and carry out the killing of Israelis 2 years ago. Purchasing weapons, building tunnels, but they were helped by MetroStroy. I'm not sure how cheap it was, but it worked to hide the weapons of the militant hostages. So Obama is the one who started these terrible events. On October 7, 2023, Obama blessed Iran, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas to destroy the Jews they so dearly love.
When nuclear-armed Iran threatened the existence of Israel, when the leaders of Israel strongly objected to the agreement, Obama ignored them. Knowing he couldn't get the treaty through the Senate, Obama issued an executive order to implement his plan. Soon, a giant military plane landed in Tehran with $400 million in cash.
We know about one plane, but how many more were there that we didn't find out about?
The nuclear deal with Iran turned United States foreign policy upside down. America will now trust Iran to behave like a good global citizen, ignoring opposition from United States allies, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. It didn't matter. Obama knew better. But when he left office in 2017, the region, as many had predicted, was in chaos. Syria was engulfed in civil war, Iraq had effectively become a puppet government of Iran, and Hamas and Hezbollah were stronger than ever. Race relations, healthcare, foreign policy. Obama really achieved his goal. He fundamentally transformed America.
And now we're trying to fix that. And by the way, it looks like we're doing a pretty good job. That's right. We're uncovering more and more evidence. It's not just, ladies and gentlemen, look. Alaska. Who is that? How did he... Was? It's a common centrally. And you, what did you dream about? Machado. Arrow is protected by this law. But presidents usually don't kill themselves. Even Putin, I think, doesn't kill himself. Pyotr Pervy killed himself, but he was mainly a sadist who enjoyed his victims' pain and suffering. Yes, at the end I promised drunk Pelosi swearing again, and a lot more.
Tell me the story of how you found this evidence. Well, how do you know, Jesse? The integrity of our democratic republic, of our elections, is of utmost importance to the American people. Knowing what happened before, these things are the Russian fraud that was called a conspiracy. I wanted to get to the truth about what really happened here. This was obviously important to President Trump. This is an important question for every American and for our country's future as a republic. So, shortly after taking office as Director of National Intelligence, I formed a special team to investigate this issue. I have to say, it wasn't easy. There are still many obstacles from the deep state within the intelligence community. But eventually, we got a whistleblower who provided important details about this story, and we were able to uncover these documents and find these documents, which really indicated that President Obama directed his national security leaders, James Clapper and John Brennan, to fabricate this intelligence community assessment in January 2017. The investigation that I led in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which we released last Friday, provided many of those key building blocks and evidence of what happened. The report we released today, the report by the majority staff of the House Intelligence Committee, investigated that January 2017 assessment that President Obama fabricated with fake non-intelligence information in order to deliberately, using false intelligence information, reach the conclusion he wanted to promote to the American people, which is what? Putin acted to help President Trump win the 2016 election. The report we released today goes through it line by line, analyzing and refuting the knowingly false claims and lies that were included in that assessment, with the specific goal of undermining President Trump's legitimacy, to undermine the will of the American people who had just voted to elect Donald Trump in 2016. Essentially, this years-long coup against President Trump began in 2016 and continued throughout his 4-year administration.
Let's go back to Trump's advisor again.
I hate to say this, but President Barack Obama, now there is irrefutable evidence that he was the instigator of a seditious conspiracy aimed at undermining the will of the American people and overthrowing the government of the United States in 2016. We must, absolutely must, hold each of these criminals accountable for the crimes they have committed. These are the most terrible crimes in American history. Trump accused former President Barack Obama
of treason and
stated that
it's time
to persecute people.
You know what? If you look at these documents, they have irrefutable evidence. It was President Obama, not just many others, but them too. But the leader of the gang was President Obama, Barack Hussein Obama. Have you heard of him? And besides the fact that the press has protected him his whole life, that's who they are. Look, he's guilty, that's not a question. You know, I like to say let's give it some time, but it's like he's guilty, they are. It was betrayal, it was every word you can think of. They tried to steal the election, they tried to confuse the election, they did things that nobody could even imagine, even in other countries.
I believe we are obligated to hold a trial for this conspiracy and put Obama in jail. Well, at least if there is enough evidence. But at the very least, we absolutely must put Obama at the defendant's table. There. And now, as promised, Nancy Pelosi, whom the journalist is trying to provoke to make her lose her temper and say something, and Nancy responded. Listen, holding your breath.
Congresswoman, how are your deals going now that you no longer have access to insider information? Is it true that you've been drinking more vodka lately? Why does your chest look like sandbags? Is your husband still seeing Hammer? And why are you dressed like a leprechaun? Did you find your pot of gold?
be quiet. I'm 200 years old. Try walking with sandbags. And yeah, my husband is sleeping with the guy with the hammer. That's why I'm drunk.
Americans want to know. We still have questions. Thank you, Poe.
I think it's lovely. Here I am, 200 years old. That's why I sway when I walk. And I drink vodka because my husband is sleeping with a man with a hammer. Well, that was the whole story, but it doesn't really matter now. I think Pelosi thought it was sarcasm, but to me, everything she said was the absolute truth. Maybe for the first time in her life, in her 200-year life, Nancy Pelosi told the truth in the form of irony and sarcasm. But don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to hit the bell. Until next time.